Right now, the United States is less than 48 hours away from a partial government shutdown. But this isn't your typical budget brawl. This isn't just about debt ceilings or tax brackets. This time, the spark didn't come from a boardroom in D.C., but from a street corner in Minneapolis. Following the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti by federal agents, Senate Democrats have drawn a line in the sand that could paralyze key parts of the American government by Saturday. They are demanding a total overhaul of the Department of Homeland Security, specifically ICE, or they're prepared to let the lights go out. But as the clock ticks toward midnight on January 30th, the question isn't just, will they shut it down? It's, what happens to American credibility on the global stage if they do? I'm Elizabeth Grant, and today we are breaking down the Minneapolis shooting, the Senate's high-stakes standoff, and the geopolitical ripple effects that our adversaries are watching very, very closely. To understand why we are on the precipice of a shutdown today, January 29, 2026, we have to look back at the chaos of last fall. You'll remember that the 2026 fiscal year actually started with the longest shutdown in American history, a 43-day marathon from October to November 2025. That battle was largely over the Affordable Care Act and Republican spending cuts. When the government finally reopened in mid-November, it was on shaky ground. Congress managed to pass 6 of the 12 major funding bills, covering things like agriculture and the interior. But the remaining 6, the heavy hitters like defense and homeland security, were left on a continuing resolution that expires tomorrow night. But then, the domestic temperature reached a boiling point. 2 weeks ago, Renee Good was shot in her vehicle by an ICE agent. Then, last Saturday, the situation turned catastrophic. Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse and U.S. citizen, was shot and killed by Border Patrol, agents in Minneapolis during a federal immigration crackdown. This transformed a routine budget debate into a civil rights firestorm. For months, the Trump administration has been utilizing a $75 billion slush fund, officially known as the Working Families Tax Cut, to surge ICE and Border Patrol agents into cities like Minneapolis and Denver. Democrats, led by Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Minnesota's own senators, are now saying, enough. They argue that the Department of Homeland Security is operating as a lawless entity with no accountability. This isn't just a policy disagreement anymore. For the Democratic base, this has become a moral ultimatum. So where do we stand right now? As of this morning, the Senate is frozen. The House already passed a $1.2 trillion package that combines the remaining 6 funding bills into one giant minibus. They want to fund everything from the Pentagon to the Department of Transportation in one go. But Senate Democrats have a different plan. They are demanding that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, funding be decoupled or stripped out of that package. They want to pass the other 5 bills, keeping the rest of the government open while holding the DHS budget hostage until they get specific reforms. What are those reforms? They want a masks off, body cameras on policy for all federal agents. They want strict new rules on warrants and a ban on agents shooting at moving vehicles. Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado put it bluntly. He called the current DHS budget a blank check for a crackdown that is now killing American citizens. The problem? The House of Representatives is currently in recess. Even if the Senate passes a modified bill today, there might not be anyone in the House to approve it before the Friday night deadline. Plus, House Republicans and the White House are refusing to budge. They see the DHS funding as essential for national security and border integrity. So, we are looking at a partial shutdown that would hit the TSA, the Department of Labor, and Health and Human Services. While essential services like Social Security checks will still go out, the administrative backbone of the country is about to hit a wall. And because it's a weekend, the immediate impact might feel light. But by Monday morning, if no deal is reached, the partial nature of this shutdown will start to feel very total for millions of federal workers. Now let's zoom out and look at this as a geopolitical analyst would. Domestic politics is rarely just domestic. When the U.S. government flickers on and off like a bad light bulb, the rest of the world takes notice. First, there is the economic vulnerability. J.P. Morgan and the CBOs have already warned that these recurring shutdowns are shaving percentage points off the U.S. GDP. We saw this in the 43-day shutdown last year. When the government shuts down, data agencies like the Bureau of Labor Statistics stop reporting. This creates a data vacuum. If the Federal Reserve can't see the numbers, they can't make informed decisions on interest rates. This uncertainty weakens the U.S. dollar and makes American markets look volatile compared to the euro, or even a stabilizing yuan. Second, consider the message to adversaries. In 2026, the world is in what analysts call a protracted interregnum, a period where the old U.S.-led order is decomposing. Every time the Senate fails to pass a basic budget, it validates the narrative pushed by Beijing and Moscow, that democracy is inherently dysfunctional. While the U.S. is paralyzed over ICE body cameras, China is moving closer to Latin American states through trade deals and infrastructure. If Washington can't even govern its own capital, how can it lead a global coalition? Third, there is the national security risk. While essential personnel like the military work through a shutdown, they do so without pay. This affects morale and retention in an era where the U.S. is trying to pivot its forces to the Indo-Pacific. Furthermore, the very agency at the heart of this, DHS, will be operating in a state of administrative chaos. A shutdown doesn't actually stop the ICE surge. They have that $75 billion reserve, but it does stop the oversight. Paradoxically, by shutting down the government to rein in DHS, the Senate might actually be removing the very legislative committees that are supposed to supervise them. Finally, we have to look at credibility. The U.S. National Security Strategy for 2026 officially stated that the days of the U.S. propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over. This shutdown is the physical manifestation of that retreat. If the U.S. is too distracted by internal reckonings to maintain a functioning government, it creates a power vacuum in the Middle East and Eastern Europe that will be filled by regional hegemons. The Minneapolis shooting was a local tragedy, but in the interconnected world of 2026, it has become a geopolitical event. It has provided the leverage for a political standoff that could signal the further decline of American institutional stability. The next 24 hours will determine if the U.S. government remains a functional entity or enters another period of paralysis. Will the Senate blink, or will the tragedy in Minneapolis lead to a total fracture in D.C.? I want to hear from you. Do you think the Senate Democrats are right to use the budget as leverage for ICE reform? Or is a government shutdown too high a price to pay for domestic policy changes? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay updated on this developing crisis. I'm Elizabeth Grant, and I'll see you in the next one.